Hello, I'm Lyle Menard, a member of the Tech Support Department here at the Siemens Company, and I'm here to talk about the VersaPOD Data Center Cabinet solution. The VersaPOD Data Center Cabinet was developed as a solution to the issues associated with traditional data center cabinets. Data center cabinets, as they existed prior to the arrival of the VersaPOD, always had issues with how do I properly manage power and communication cabling within these spaces. Quite often, many of these spaces have high density equipment mounted in them, a large volume of both power and communication cabling. And although those traditional cabinets were great places to mount the equipment, working in those cabinets on a day-to-day basis was extremely difficult because of the inability to manage those cables. Development of the VersaPOD was centered specifically around solving that problem. Let's open up the door and take a look inside. What we're looking at here is the front of the VersaPOD cabinet. This would typically be the cold aisle side of the data center. And what I have represented here is a core cabinet. The core cabinet is typically your highest concentration of both copper and fiber in the data center. All the servers, all the downstream equipment from the network are coming back to this concentration point. This is where you would have your large core switch. So what we've done with the VersaPOD is we've given you facilities for managing that volume of cable. So in this particular configuration, you see I've positioned angled patch panels on the top. This allows me to dress my patch cords directly into the vertical channels down the outsides of the cabinet to come back in again to patch in to the network cabinet, the core switch, I should say, at the base of the cabinet. By utilizing angled patch panels, I eliminate the need for horizontal cable managers, which just eat up valuable space within the cabinet. Now we've moved around to the back side of the VersaPOD cabinet. This is the area where servers and power distribution typically reside. The VersaPOD cabinet, as you saw on the front, we had that vertical channel that's created as cabinets get bayed together. And in the core cabinet that you saw earlier, it's used specifically, I like to use it specifically for cable management for those large volumes of cable. But in those same spaces, we have the ability to install vertical patching, power distribution, as well as cable management. So what I have behind me is a server cabinet. Actually, I'm going to remove this door so you can see inside better. As I described in the front of the cabinet, we have this zero-use space that's created as cabinets get joined together, and we utilize that space for cable management. Here in the server environment, I typically use that space for both power distribution and, as you see here, for communication requirements. In this particular scenario, I have copper patch panels, but this particular accessory item here can support any 19-inch rack mount device. In this case, like I said, I have copper, but I could put fiber in here. I could put active equipment. I can put power distribution if need be. As long as it's 19-inch rack mount, I can put it in this space. But the idea being is I'm capturing that infrastructure, the cabling that's entering and leaving this cabinet, whether it be from above or below, I'm capturing it in this passive space between bayed cabinets. The concept being is that all the communication requirements for the servers on the left and to the right are serviced out of this one area. It allows me to use minimally compliant length patch cords, so I can get away with 1 meter 3 foot patch cords to feed the ports on the servers to their connections to the network. What I'd like to talk about next is the functionality of these zero-use patch panels. As I described earlier, the zero-use space is created as the cabinets get joined together. In the beginning of the job, as the data center is being built, it's very easy for the technicians to climb inside these cabinets and do what they need to do to run the infrastructure cabling. But what happens after the fact? I've loaded up this cabinet with electronics. I need to gain access to the back side of these patch panels, maybe to add a cable, to make a repair. Well, our vertical patch panels are secured in 4 corners the way you would mount any patch panel in a traditional configuration. But once the screws are removed, our vertical patch panels have the ability to slide out. What this does is, by removing this cable management finger that's mounted alongside of it, if so equipped, is only attached with 2 screws, it creates a space that a technician can get in there behind the panel to make those changes that we spoke of, and when done, slide the panel back in place and re-secure. We've now moved down the road to the next zero-use space. This would be the zero-use space being created by the next set of cabinets down the road. And in a typical design, I like to utilize the next space for power distribution. So as you see here, I have one of my intelligent PDUs mounted here, giving me the power requirements for the server right next to it. Brackets are designed in such a way that if need be, I can put 2 of these intelligent PDUs side by side, providing me the redundancy of A and B power for these servers in this particular cabinet. Behind it, utilizing the same an additional bracket, I can put 2 more PDUs, providing the same A and B power for the next cabinet. So from a design standpoint, it's a very easy layout. I use one 0U space to create the communication requirements for the cabinets to the left and to the right. The next space down the road does the same thing for power left and right. And you just keep alternating that pattern all the way down the row. I like to talk about airflow or thermal management of the cabinets. The cabinet, as you see right next to me that I have my hand on right now, is based on a passive hot aisle, cold aisle design. Obviously just drawing cold air from the front, exhausting the hot air out the back. This cabinet as it stands right now can handle about 7 to 8 kilowatts of heat load. The cabinet next to it is equipped with our ducted chimney system. You'll notice the big difference having solid rear doors. The purpose of the solid rear doors is what we want is the hot air coming off the equipment inside through the natural chimney effect being drawn up through the roof of the cabinet and being brought back to the room's air conditioning system to be treated. Cabinet equipped, as you see here, is about a 12 or 13 kilowatt heat load capacity. So you can see there's a 50% increase in what the cabinet's capable of just by configuring it with different options as you see here. The next step up would be what we call our ice pack. It's a rear door heat exchanging system. This system here uses water to remove that heat off the back of the equipment. Water is about 4,000 times more effective at removing hot air than air is. What this system does is it's tied to your building's chilled water system, takes the hot air that's coming off the equipment, strips that out through the water, gets pumped back to the chilled water system, and the only air coming through this door is roughly 70-degree Fahrenheit air. The nice thing about that is that this system is 100% passive. This door does not draw any power. It does not make any noise at all. If this system were to be shut down for maintenance purposes, it would basically act as a standard perforated door. But the nice thing about the system, and it varies depending on the configuration of your facility, but I have the capability of treating 32 kilowatts of heat with a single door. So a lot of capabilities here. No one system I consider is the one solution to everyone's problem. Everyone's facility is going to be different, but you need to be aware of what's available to you. Another key aspect of thermal management within the data center is how do we deal with side venting switches. VersaPOD solves that problem obviously by the 0U space that I was already talking about. We have a series of angled baffle systems that live in this 0U space, and in this case you're looking at the back side of the cabinet. So the angled baffle is taking the hot exhaust air off the large core switch and exhausting it into the hot aisle. There's a baffle just like this installed in the opposite direction on the cold aisle side to draw that cold air and direct it into the intakes of the switch. What I have behind me is what we refer to as the side pod. In scenarios as you see here, where I have what we refer to as an end of row environment, I need to be able to create this full 0U space I referred to earlier to house that intake baffle. I can't do that in an end of row environment because I've only got about 3.5 inches of space from the frame of the cabinet to the side panel. By adding on the side pod, I create a full 0U scenario just like we've been talking about earlier. And in this space, behind these vertical cable managers that you see here, I house that intake baffle. The nice thing about that is it gives me that ability to create that full 0U space without the need of purchasing an additional cabinet. I can do it just by adding on this piece. I've had customers who want to utilize this accessory item just to gain that 0U cable management. They weren't typically using it for baffle environment. They just had a lot of density, a lot of patch cores that had to be managed in a single cabinet. So the side pod solves that problem as well. One of the key features of the VersaPOD data center cabinet is the functionality of the doors. Both the front and the rear have what's referred to as dual hinge capability. Here we are on the back side of the cabinet, and you can see we have my traditional wardrobe style doors. To get it to my equipment, obviously, day-to-day basis, I need to get it to these servers. We also need to access this space, whether it's for communication or power distribution. The nice thing about the VersaPOD cabinet is I can shut down this door, grab the other handle between two adjacent cabinets, and access this 0U space. Thank you for your time. If you have any more questions about the VersaPOD or any of the Siemens products, please visit our website at www.siemens.com.